exciting movie from this weekend. $93 million grossing Godzilla.
It's so funny, $93 million. I don't think the second and third series saw that kind of money in their lifespans from 85 to 2004.
Oh, surely. Yeah.
I mean, that's what I think is.
Yeah, you can lump all them together. Like,
I mean, you can lump. It's like, it's really funny. You put all the new Mad Max movie that comes out next summer will probably gross more the opening weekend than all three movies combined.
That's probably true.
They have a $67 million world gross. So this is incredible news because years ago, you used to see, we're going to try Godzilla again. And it's like, oh, God, how bad is this going to be? The key is you kind of crib from Steven Spielberg and you crib from the older movies and you get something that is actually very memorable and decent. Jamie, you actually went out and saw it?
Hold on a second, though. You just used the word decent. Is it better than decent, though?
Oh, it's. I don't think Godzilla's ever looked this good in his whole life. Godzilla's never looked this good.
The Japanese think he looks too fat.
That's. Have you ever watched a Godzilla movie? He doesn't look like he's a Slim Fast model.
No,
he's not a bad guy. That's the dumbest thing. That's the dumbest. He ain't an after photo. He's never looked like an after photo. He's always been bulky. He's always got.
He's got some pretty thick thighs. Always.
He's got cankles. He's got some cankles, baby. He's got cankles. All right, let's just.
Okay.
This whole argument that he's overweight and fat. No, I mean, I want to tell the Japanese. Really, have you looked at your guy? I mean, even in the best of times, after the blast, with all that heat, he never lost the weight. Even after the blast, even after the oxygen destroyer, he's, come on.
Yeah.
I want to first say I'm surprised that you saw it, Jamie, and that your reaction was as positive as it was.
Yeah.
No one's taking that into account. Your reaction, because you are not a Godzilla fan. Am I correct in saying that?
No, I could care less about monster things. Yeah.
Yeah. So your reaction is one of the nicest things that I could ever think that you would say about, because this is a Wes Anderson movie for most people. If you don't like Godzilla before this movie ain't going to change your mind. This is like the Grand Budapest.
Wes Anderson's Godzilla. That would have been interesting.
Well, that would have been.
Godzilla.
But I have to address.
I want to see that movie.
But that's what it's. But that's the analogy I'm making. If you don't like Godzilla, this movie ain't going to change your mind. This movie's just not going to do it. I think it's as far as the movies go. I think that the guys that started Toho Studios, Ishiro Honda, E.J. Tsuburusha, and Tanaka would have killed to have had the budget to make this movie. They would have killed. I mean, I said that about Pacific Rim too. I actually think this works a lot better in many ways than Pacific Rim.
I hope so.
Well, the problem with I need to address some things here that are. There's been a lot of complaints that Godzilla isn't in the movie that much. If you go back and watch any of the films, the good films, the really good, he's not in. He doesn't show up till very late in the movie.
Yeah.
I want to say something.
Can I just address this?
Yeah.
I want to address this thing. See, people nowadays are used to the monster movies in which the monster shows up early, because there was a backlash at a certain point in film history of keeping the monster away from our eyes until a certain part of the movie, until a lot of the movie had been shown. So there was a certain backlash against that, of keeping the monster away, and so the movies have now gone to where they show the monster early, but keeping the monster away from our eyes is actually something that throws back to earlier monster movies in the 50s, or even back in the 30s and so forth.
King Kong. No one did it.
Yeah, they kept.
King Kong.
Yeah, exactly. King Kong. And we'll talk about more about the relationship between King Kong and Godzilla a little bit later.
Well, I think
I have a question I want
very
to ask
interesting.
Yeah,
it's very interesting though. I mean, I do have to give props to Edwards. No one did this better than Spielberg with Jaws. Whether that is the definitive. But the movie does owe a lot to several Spielberg movies: Close Encounters, War of the Worlds, Jurassic Park, obviously. But so if you're going to crib from somebody, this is who you crib from. If you're going to go after, but I have to
think combo of the. It's a combo of the Japanese and the Spielberg-y sort of thing. Yeah,
it is. But it also owes a large amount to the Willis O'Brien King Kong, especially in the very last fight. Is, as my brother Michael pointed out, is the ultimate homage to probably the greatest fight ever put on screen. I think is between in the 33 version, Kong versus a T-Rex. Remember, and it is ironically just a stunning, beautiful homage to that. But going back to the thing, it's good that he's not in it a lot, because when you are watching the fights at the end, as exciting as they are, and we've been waiting the whole time for this, it does get repetitive, like in Pacific Rim and especially Man of Steel. The fights just get, it's only so much.
Yeah, this whole fighting thing, it's, yeah.
The other thing, though, is that the other criticism, which, is a valid criticism, but he cuts away. As soon as the action gets going, he cuts away. It's what he cuts away is so much more interesting. I was watching a movie last night, one of the older Godzilla films, which is, I think, one of the best ones of the Japanese ones, the 1964 Godzilla vs. Mothra. But the cutaways in that are some of the worst cutaways in the history of motion pictures. So I have to give Gareth Edwards credit for at least cutting away the things that actually are somewhat more interesting than in the Japanese films.
Some actual drama and everything.
Yeah, there is some actual drama. The other thing that I guess people aren't bringing up is that in the San Francisco sequence with the bridge and the bomb and everything, is right in The Dark Knight Rises also. I mean, it's kind of another legendary production, but and Warner Brothers too. It also wow, it's like The Dark Knight Rises in parts. If you like Godzilla, I think you'll like this movie. If you don't like Godzilla, this movie ain't going to change your mind. That's how I look at it.
Well, it really sounds like the way you're speaking about it. It's an amalgamation of certain things that they hope appeals to the audience. And, I think Gareth Edwards is a very interesting director for the movie, and so it seems natural to me, with monsters.
He's the only person that I think could do it. I've had this conversation with Roland for the last couple of weeks. If you were, I always said in the 80s and 90s, you would get Terry Gilliam or Tim Burton to direct this movie. And now this is
they would have done it, really. Terry Gilliam wouldn't have known what to do with it.
But if you would have done it back in their day, in their heydays, I think they would have been some interesting results. Today, I wouldn't even think about that. Do you think that Del Toro would have been the only other director I think that would be could do an interesting job with it? So I think Gareth Edwards has done the best job that anyone could do with this. I really do. I have to say, given the previous movie, Monsters, it was a bold and good choice.
Well, what were your thoughts on it, Jamie? I mean, I haven't seen the movie, so I have no thoughts. So,
I thought that. Look, there's a review on Salon. I mean, critics have been pretty kind to it. There's a review on Salon that says it's the best summer blockbuster since Jaws. I think that's going way overboard. And they bring up stuff
he's hyperbole a lot, that guy on Salon.
Yeah, and he's like, and the David Strathairn character, and how different he is as the man in command, and he has a conscience, and no, he doesn't really. I mean, all of those roles are so stock, and there's so many quality actors that are just in the movie because they want to be seen by a large audience, but they're not given anything to do. The best supporting actress nominee, Sally Hawkins, is in it. I doubt she even knew her character name. I mean, she's just so irrelevant.
I don't remember. What was her name?
I don't know.
Sally Hawkins? It wasn't Sally
and so the movie desperately wants to build empathy for its characters in the first hour, and that's the hour that a lot of people probably are going to find slow, because it does invest somewhat, but then you have an empathetic figure like Bryan Cranston who disappears, and it's taken over by that Aaron Taylor Johnson guy who is one of the blandest actors I've ever seen. He's not somebody you want to root for or invest in. And then there's Ken Watanabe, who's wasted. All he does is like think really hard, and then he acts really surprised with big bulging eyes. That's his entire performance. But then the Godzilla stuff's after the first hour, and it's that's what you go to a Godzilla movie for, and that's what will please the masses. I just thought these two halves of this movie were like terribly divided. Like they tried to invest stuff in the first hour, and then they said, "Okay, screw that. We can't keep up with that. So let's go to the Godzilla stuff."
All right, I have to say something about Ken Watanabe though. I don't think he's the closest thing we have to a Quint in this movie. Because he does it's a shame. I mean, he really does the scene where
that's the problem. That's the problem with the movie, and that's what separates it most from a Spielberg movie. Because everyone's talking about Jaws, or everybody's talking about Jurassic Park. Spielberg,
they're all talking about other movies.
he populates his movies with interesting, colorful people.
Right.
There's no color whatsoever to any of these people.
No, I give you that, Jamie. I actually would give you. There aren't in the whole history of the previous films, going right up until 2004, trust me, Aaron Taylor Johnson is far more interesting than most of the characters. Trust me. For a lot of us, until recently, these movies were horribly edited on television and dubbed. So, how should I say it, things were missing. The original Japanese versions aren't much better. I almost have to dare to say even they're very heavy-handed in their messages, especially for those ones in the 70s that deal with pollution and everything. I mean, you haven't seen that movie, the making of that movie. I would love to see a documentary on the making of that movie when the producer, the guy, Tanaka, was sick while they were making that. And when he got out of the hospital and he saw the movie, he's like, "You guys will never make a movie again. You destroyed the franchise." He was furious.
With Smog Monster? But you know what? Godzilla versus the Smog Monster is one of the great titles of all time. So that's the one that you
but Jamie brings up a really, going back to what Jamie's talking about, you bring up a great, no one does this like Spielberg. Spielberg does this mixing of the big extravaganza and the effects and the personal story and the characters. No one does that like him. He really has managed to just make that his own.
Well, the thing about Spielberg is he doesn't have to. His name allows him to not really have to rely on market forces. In other words, the marketers or the people who are concerned with marketing in the executive offices aren't really concerned with, they have Spielberg, so that's it. And so they don't have to concern themselves with trying to get in as many tips of the hat to other movies,
Right.
So you don't have to worry about tipping a hat to you don't have to worry about tipping the hat to Jaws, because you wouldn't have to worry about that because it's Spielberg. But you wouldn't have to worry about they wouldn't worry about tipping their hat to The Dark Knight and putting an element of that in there or anything like that. So if Spielberg were directing something like this, it would seem rather more original.
But he did,
and
So he did with Jurassic Park, and I did my initial criticism of Jurassic Park, and I came home and told my friend Eric Turnauer, there wasn't enough dinosaurs in it. And I guess that was at the time kind of a common, not that it's a bad movie, it was just a criticism. There weren't enough dinosaurs in it. And the other criticism, if you notice, by a lot of mainstream critics, a lot of people liked it, but they said, all Spielberg has done is made a very expensive Destroy All Monsters movie. In one sense, was one of the things thrown at it, and it's ironic that this guy has made a Godzilla movie that is more in tune with Jurassic Park, or wants to be.